level. This is why.
Hey guys, so we had our team meeting yesterday with Elite Sports Advising with all our advisors. And one of the things we talked about was just how much recruiting has changed in the last few years and kind of what maybe the 5 biggest changes are in college baseball recruiting today versus what it was 5, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly 15, 20 years ago. And what we found is that a lot of you guys in the comments with some of our videos are saying, well, I mean, if, you know, do you really need a recruiting advisor? I mean, if you're good, they'll find you. And, well, my brother got recruited 5 or 6 years ago, and, you know, he was able to get to a good school and stuff like that, or maybe a cousin. You know, we get it. I mean, we totally get that. The reality is that, you know, I went through the process 15 years ago, and it was way simpler. That was true. You know, you were a good player. You were going to get found. You were going to get seen. And so we thought it would be really good to kind of, as people that are in this game day to day, talk to coaches, understand what's going on in recruiting because of that. We thought it would be a good idea to talk about, all right, what are the top 5 biggest changes to college baseball recruiting in the recent years that have made it really this complicated thing that it is now? So starting off, number 5 is going to be the travel tournaments. Now, you might say, well, I mean, how do you get seen if you don't go to a travel tournament? That's true. I mean, that's where coaches still, as much as they're going now versus a few years ago, that's still where you're going to get probably seen the most. Here are the issues with the tournaments. Like I talked about in a recent video, these tournaments are way bigger than they've ever been. You're talking 10 to 15,000 players in a single tournament, playing at fields that are an hour and a half southeast or an hour north. And so as a recruiting coordinator or as an assistant coach, your entire day has to be planned out. Well, I'm driving down an hour to go see this kid pitch, and then I got to drive an hour and a half north of East Cobb or wherever to get to another field to maybe catch the back half of a game and see a couple at bats with a kid. Gone are the days where a coach can just kind of stroll up to a random field and feel like he's got a chance to find a kid that's going to be special enough that he's going to want to recruit. So that's number 1. The tournaments, not only geographically, fields are way far away and sparse, and so far guys have to make plans, but there's so many players too, there's just no way they can see everybody. And so if you don't have somebody that's kind of talking to coaches, hey, this is his schedule, this is when he's playing, I think he'd be a great fit for you, and making sure a coach knows who he is, it's very hard to get noticed. You're essentially banking on, well, hopefully a coach shows up to a game to watch someone else, and I have a great enough game that he notices me. That's it. The other thing is now more than ever with these tournaments and coaches not really being out at the tournaments, that's number 2. Coaches are out at the portal watching, you know, college summer league games in the Northwoods and the Cape Cod League, et cetera, until really the beginning and middle of July. I mean, the difference this summer and how many coaches I saw at the major tournaments was striking. Dramatically less coaches, and everyone we talked to said, hey, we got to nail down our portal class. I mean, we got to figure out these portal guys before a lot of them get taken up by other schools. And so they're not really focused on high schoolers until beginning or middle of July. The other thing is this, with how much less these tournaments are being recruited by coaches, it's sometimes a little bit better now to get to college camps where you're fit. Now, the key is, do you know how talented you are as a player or how talented your son is? Do you have someone that you can give you an honest evaluation to figure out, okay, these are the camps we should target? Does he have any communication with the school before the camp so it makes sense to go to them? Because going to just random camps, you're probably not going to get great results. But if you have someone reaching out to camps, reaching out to coaches about the camps, letting them know you'll be coming at schools where your evaluation is a fit for that type of school, those can be really good places to have coaches have eyes on you and potentially start that recruiting process with the school. Now, number 4 is going to be the MLB draft. Now, some of you may be thinking, the draft, what does that have to do with college baseball recruiting? Well, think about it like this. Before I got to college baseball, the draft was 60 rounds. So a lot of college players were coming off the board. There was more teams in the minor leagues. So they needed to fill more spots. So way more guys were getting drafted. By the time I got to college, it was down to 40. Now it's 20. So that's a third of the amount of players that were typically drafted just 15, 20 years ago are now getting drafted. What that means is there's more guys sticking around in college baseball. So teams need less guys in the high school recruiting class and from the portal. So that's made it harder to be a guy in a class like that. You couple that with number 3, which is NIL. These are both kind of two sides of the same coin, because with less spots in the draft, there's more people sticking around. And what NIL has done, it's added another incentive for a really good college player that may not have a big, projectable pro style tool set. Well, instead of getting drafted late or signing a non-drafted free agent deal and signing for $1,000, $10,000, they can get a big contract NIL from a Power 4 school or one of the mid majors that's really giving out, one of the top mid majors that can give out some NIL money, and they're getting paid more in college than they would at the professional level. If you don't know, minor league players get paid peanuts, even after they've kind of had their pay elevated a little bit in recent years. So the reality is that you couple number 4 and number 3, the draft and NIL together, both of them are making it so that more players, even the really good players, are sticking around in college baseball because it's just harder to get drafted. And it's a lot easier if you're a college performer that's put up numbers, schools will pay you to come play. That's just the reality. So number 2, and this is going to be no surprise to you guys, it's the portal. Now, like I talked about the tournaments, the portal has made it to where, one, coaches are not even watching high school players as much as they did in recent years. It used to be as soon as the college season was over, every tournament you were going to see a lot of coaches because they wanted to just get a head start, especially over the teams that were still playing in the NCAA tournament. But now with the portal, they got to lock down that class before they do their high school kids. Because think about it like this, their portal class, they're recruiting those guys for the coming year. So that's a few months away. They got to lock that down first. The guys at most schools, especially the Division I level, will be recruiting in that same summer are for the next year. So they're not coming on campus in 2 months. They're coming on campus in a year and 2 months from now. So they have to lock down that portal class before they start looking at, like this summer, the 25s or the 26s. And so what you're looking at is the portal has made it to where coaches are not out evaluating and watching players at tournaments anymore, but it's also halved the amount of players that a school needs in the high school class. So the reality for like most mid majors is instead of needing 7 or 8 arms and 4 or 5, 6 position players, now they need 4 or 5 arms, but maybe a few position players. We're gonna go to the portal for all our position guys, or we're gonna get a bunch of arms in the portal. We'll take a few high school guys, but we're not going to get any position guys. So the reality is that recruiting classes on average have been halved of high schoolers. And obviously there's going to be outlier situations where a school loses a lot of kids in the portal and all of a sudden they got to rebuild some of that with high school guys. But there's no denying that the portal has made it to where way less high school players are coming into every recruiting class. And so that's number 2 and one of the most recent changes. Now the biggest change and most recent are the changes to these roster sizes. Now, what does that mean? That means that instead of 40 guys on the roster, there's now only 34 allowed. And we'll talk about kind of what these impacts are going to be. So before we get into it, a lot of this stuff has really not been solidified with coaches from the NCAA yet. That announcement was made over a month ago, but coaches are still telling us, like, we're still trying to figure out what exactly the ground rules are going to be. Is our fall roster size going to be locked at 32? Are we going to be able to bring in any more guys than just 32? Can we bring walk-ons in, stuff like that? So that's still kind of waiting to be solidified. But let's just look at what the reality of that is. Now you combine 6 less spots on the roster with what the portal's already done to high school recruiting. That means 6 less spots. So probably even less high school players going to get recruited because of that. And the reality is this, with how offenses are performing in college baseball right now, we all know, the ball is just flying. Home run numbers have never been higher. They're going up every single year. Pitching numbers are just inflated. ERAs, you got like a 4.5 or a 5 ERA in college baseball, you're a solid average arm at that level. You're a guy that you're going to throw that guy a bunch. So because of that, you can't afford to recruit less pitchers. You need as many arms as you can get because you're going to have weekends where, you know, your starter gets blown out in the first or second inning, and then you got to cover a whole weekend in that whole game with bullpen guys, and then they're going to be tired. So you're going to need as many arms as you can get. So the reality is less position players from the high school class are going to get recruited, and, you know, a lot more portal guys. And again, it's just another change that has made it to where for high school players, it's much harder to get in a recruiting class with any school because they can be way more selective. If they need to bring in 16 guys, they can say, you know what, we like him. We're not 100% sure about him, but we got a few guys that we think are for sure things. So you know what, he's got potential. We're going to bring him in. That doesn't happen anymore because they don't need to bring in a guy that he's got potential. We're not sure if he's going to be good because they can get a proven guy out of the portal. So when you combine all five of these things, the travel tournaments, the way they've changed, the MLB draft being lesser rounds, so more guys sticking around, NIL, incentivizing guys to stay around in college baseball, the portal, having recruiting classes in high school players and even less than that with a lot of schools. And now the roster size is being changed from 40 to 34. All of these things have happened in like a span of 3 or 4 years. Most major sports go through a kind of massive change in legislation in 1 year or in 10 years, once every 10 years. Baseball's gone through 3 in the last 3 years. So the idea that, oh, he's good, he'll get discovered. There's a lot of people with that mindset that unfortunately, you know, junior summer is going to come and go, and there's not going to be any conversations with schools happening, you know, no visits happening, stuff like that. So we wanted to make this video just to really give a synopsis of what everything's happened. I mean, a lot of us have coached at the college level, and some of our more veteran coaches on our team, like Pat Pinkman and John Murphy and Wally Krancer, they've said they don't remember thinking back, you know, a decade. What was the biggest change in legislation and recruiting or anything like that? And they said, you know, really there isn't one. Maybe the, you know, changes for the recruiting schedule so that, you know, July 4th and Father's Day you had off. You didn't have to go out recruiting on those days. Or, you know, the recruiting or the scholarship minimums being changed from, you know, 25%. You had to give a guy 25%, making it no minimums. That was a big change, but it really didn't affect that much. So we're talking about 3 or 4 changes from NCAA, and then you throw in the draft changes and the tournament changes. College baseball recruiting has never been more difficult for high school players. So, guys, I say all that just to inform you guys, educate you guys on what's going on. This was something our team really wanted to get out there so that parents and kids just understand exactly what the situation is. If you are looking for help, if you want to have a conversation and just see kind of how we work at Elite Sports Advising, go to our website, front page, elitesportsadvising.com, fill out an eval request. We'll meet with you for 30 to 40 minutes, talk about kind of our evaluation of your son, where we think he could potentially end up, how our process works, why we're so successful, and we'll see if that's a fit for you. We'd love to work with you. Appreciate all the support you guys have put on the videos. Comment, like it, tell us what you think. Do you disagree? Do you think we're crazy? Maybe we got this totally wrong. Let us know what you think. We'll answer all your comments. Again, appreciate all the support you guys have had on our videos, and we'll be back with